It's really important that when we have conversations like this, they're rooted in fact. I know you don't want to hear this because the truth burns. It was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? That's slander. Hopefully this will bless your life and change it. When will it end? We have a broad swath of highly suspect individuals leading our country, and I prefer to call them what they are, bigots. I know this, y'all know this. Most recently, we saw this bigotry, this ignorance on full display. They've been working overtime, making sexist, misogynistic, and downright disrespectful remarks, like it's as important as the oath they took to be sworn into office. These remarks are too often targeted not just at any woman of color, but their own colleagues who swore the same oath. As I evolve myself, I'm tired of simply calling folks out with the receipts as proof. I also want to instruct and uplift you from your bigotry. But first, the facts. I'm coming into the importance of ensuring we are speaking the same language, and that same intention applies to the definition of a bigot. So let's start there. What is a bigot actually? A bigot is a person who is obstinately or intolerantly devoted to his or their own opinions and prejudices, especially one who regards or treats the members of a group, such as a racial ethnic group, with hatred and intolerance. I'm clear. You clear? We clear. Now here are the most recent top 5 bigots in our nation's politics, and there's a bonus. Ted Yoho, you're first on the list. Why, son? And how dare you? Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who represents New York 14, was walking up the steps of the U.S. Capitol to do the work of the people when she was accosted by Congressman Ted Yoho of Florida 3 when this happened.
Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous. And then he took a few more steps, and after I had recognized his comments as rude, he walked away and said, "I'm rude. You're calling me rude." I took a few steps ahead, and I walked inside and cast my vote, because my constituents send me here each and every day to fight for them.
Do you really believe that people are shooting and killing each other because they're hungry? You know, you're unbelievable. You're disgusting. So many times, women of color are attacked for their passion. We are demonized. We are called bitches and everything but a child of God. I don't know that Rep. Yoho would levy these same insults at a white woman, someone he could really see being his wife or daughter. Yoho using the word disgusting also plays into the notion that people of color are unclean and unkept. And then Representative Ted Yoho had the nerve to call Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez out of her name. Not in the alley, not at a bar, and not that this should even matter, but it was on the Capitol building steps. He didn't just call her out her name, he called her a fucking bitch. So she had not spoken ill of his mother or family or even his constituents. So what did she do, you ask? She stated during a policy discussion, as you'd expect from an elected official who took an oath, that poverty and unemployment are causing a spike in crime in New York. Specifically, she was speaking at a town hall meeting on policing with mothers of 2 victims of police violence, Ramarley Graham and Eric Garner. Her exact quote, "Crime is a problem of a diseased society which neglects its marginalized people. Policing is not the solution to crime." Fair response from Yoho? Not even and not ever.
I rise to apologize for the abrupt manner of the conversation I had with my colleague from New York. It is true that we disagree on policies and visions for America, but that does not mean we should be disrespectful. Having been married for 45 years with 2 daughters, I'm very cognizant of my language. The offensive name-calling words attributed to me by the press were never spoken to my colleagues, and if they were construed that way, I apologize for their misunderstanding. As my colleagues know, I'm passionate about those affected by poverty. My wife Carolyn and I started out together at the age of 19 with nothing.
Why did the truth hurt you so bad, Congressman? Is it not common sense to understand that poverty, unemployment, and these current circumstances, coronavirus, are having an impact on the crime rate. Do better. Man, and even when you got the chance to do better, guess what? Epic fucking fail. Was that supposed to be an apology? You weren't even honest. And that is exactly why Bread of the World gave you the boot. How are you gonna blame that toxic masculine behavior on my Jesus? Good night. Ted Yoho is the definition of a bigot. And why, sir? You're at the very top of the bigot list. Number 2 is Senator Tom Cotton. And you really are 1B because you and Ted Yoho are neck and neck. You see, it is so very easy to be a bigot when you don't understand the history of this country. Tom Cotton does not understand history. My point of privilege is I was taught about Black history at home and didn't have to rely on the little raggedy paragraph about slavery in those lying-ass textbooks. That's not true for Tom Cotton. In an article published in a paper from his home state, Cotton said the following: "We have to study the history of slavery and its role and impact on the development of our country because otherwise we can't understand our country. As the founding fathers said, it was the necessary evil built upon which the Union was built. But the Union was built in a way, as Lincoln said, to put slavery on the course to its ultimate extinction." Slavery as a necessary evil? Yes, of course. After Black Twitter got in that ass, he tried to walk his true personal beliefs about the necessary evil. But hold on, Tom. Your racism is showing, homeboy. Here's what we know. You've also said the New York Times 1619 Project is a racially divisive, revisionist account of history that denies the noble principles of freedom and equality on which our nation was founded. Not a single cent of federal funding should go to indoctrinate young Americans with this left-wing garbage. This about the Pulitzer Prize winning 1619 Project, which was the brainchild of Nicole Hannah Jones? What? I pray the ancestors visit you in your dreams to let you know that the real revision was Christopher Columbus waltzing onto mainland America, calling people Indian because he was lost. On behalf of Angela, bringer of truth and the first documented enslaved person arriving on these shores 401 years ago, that is 1619, let me just tell you, you gonna learn today, Tom. The issue is not only are you claiming the truth is left-wing propaganda, that quote was in a statement tied to the release of your bill. You had the audacity to use your taxpayer dollar salary to introduce a bill, the Saving American History Act of 2020, which would prohibit the use of federal funds to teach the 1619 Project in K-12 schools or skilled school districts. Schools that teach the 1619 Project would be ineligible for federal professional development grants. Y'all love to talk about government waste. Meanwhile, what is this? Nicole Hannah Jones' response is true Black woman queendom. This bill speaks to the power of journalism more than anything I've ever done in my career. Absolutely, Queen. We are with you. We don't know what Tom Cotton is doing. Third, now he can't decide if the Confederacy are heroes or insurrectionists. But he has decided to compare Black Lives Matter protesters and protests to the Confederacy. Specifically, he said, these insurrectionists in the streets of Portland are little different from the insurrectionists who seceded from the Union in 1861 in South Carolina and tried to take over Fort Sumter. Now is a great time to remind you that just like the 1619 Project, Black Lives Matter is a movement born in the minds and hearts of three powerful Black women, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors. Watch your mouth, Tom. Dang, what number are we even on? Tom Cotton also praised the only state where Kanye made it on the ballot as being working class, Wyoming, but it was to undermine legislation for DC statehood. Now is as good a time as ever to also remind you that DC has a Black woman mayor, Muriel Bowser. He asked, would you trust Mayor Bowser to keep Washington safe if she were given the powers of a governor? Would you trust Marion Barry? We see you, Tom. We're not with it. It's bigotry. What is bigotry without the regular appearance of the congressman with the most DUIs? Matt Goetz, welcome. No, his bigotry is not his drunken stupor. It is what appears to be the new right-wing talking point comparing Black Lives Matter to the Confederacy. And no, this is no accident. Black Lives Matter has its highest approval rating in history. So they scared, y'all. What in the world will happen if Black lives really matter? Congressman Goetz decided to bring his boogeyman to the place where they thrive. Fox News with Judge Jeanine. The great irony, Judge Jeanine, is that the organizers of Black Lives Matter, who pledge allegiance to the destruction of America, have a lot more in common with the Confederate generals that they hate than they would like to admit, because it was in fact the Confederacy that initially wanted to kick out federal officials who wanted to destroy America and change it to something different. Wow, bro. Wow. If you all really think BLM is just like the Confederacy, why don't you put BLM signs right next to your Confederate flags? Probably because you don't believe this nonsense. They're just your newest version of a boogeyman. You're comparing a movement that at its core is about seeing the full humanity and liberation of Black people with one that dehumanized and enslaved us. Now that is ass backwards. This comparison is not only dangerous, it traffics in the belief that activism, specifically Black activism, is un-American or unpatriotic. Y'all out here protesting and screaming to get haircuts is so American, right? Fighting supermarket workers about wearing masks. But the biggest problem in our democracy are the people protesting for human and civil rights. There's an acronym for this. Am I surprised though? Absolutely never. This is the same guy who said white privilege and male privilege are racist terms. Well, Matt, how did you make it on the biggest list? I guess we won't ever know. Number 4, Donald John Trump. If it isn't his niece Mary saying the N-word was regularly sliding out of his mouth, it's something else. And honestly, what hasn't he done in the land of bigotry? He continuously uses his bully pulpit to insult women of color and question our intelligence, especially Black women. I'm hot about it right now because we have all been paying respect to the icon, Congressman John Lewis, who Donald Trump has refused to honor. And it is for that reason that I want to remind you who your president is. If it's not Congresswoman Waters, it's the squad. If it's not the squad, it's Congresswoman Frederica Wilson or Jamel Hill. He's hella reckless. He has stated one of the most brilliant minds in Congress, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, has a very low IQ.
So Maxine Waters is leading the charge. A seriously low IQ person. Seriously.
A very low IQ person, Maxine Waters.
And then he does it again.
Maxine Waters, a very low IQ individual. You ever see her?
Really? Y'all's president also attacked the squad. If you don't know who the squad is, look them up. But their credentials are fire. Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who clearly is a regular target, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib. These members represent the face of America, and that man does not like it at all. And so Donald Trump tweets about them. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries, most of them are from here, whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly, it's so hard to read these tweets, y'all, and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? Then come back and show us how it is done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. Man, y'all, he was right about one thing in this tweet from 2019, and it's still accurate today. Their government is a complete and total catastrophe. All thanks to you, boo. This man has attacked these women with xenophobia and statements diminishing their intelligence, telling them to go back to where they came from, and specifically targeting Representative Ilhan Omar at his rally in North Carolina. His loyal supporters started to chant, "Send her back," and he claims he tried to stop it. Yeah, right. How about he started it? Once again, he co-signs an attack on the intelligence of women of color. Why wouldn't 45 be on my list? How can you be the leader of the free world and use your platform to lodge vicious verbal attacks on members of Congress who happen to be women of color? I'm confident you have a lifetime membership on the bigot list, Donald. Number 5 is the legendary racist, xenophobic, and soon-to-be former Congressman Steve King. He has a long, sordid history of making racist, xenophobic, and sexist comments. He even questioned white supremacy. Not in a great way either. He questioned why white supremacy is offensive. Yes, he did that. His offensive comments were in support of his suggestion that sexually assaulted women should be denied abortions. Moreover, King's comments served as a reminder of the way sexism and white supremacy so often go hand in hand.
What if it was okay, and what if we went back through all the family trees and just pulled those people out that were products of rape and incest? Would there be any population of the world left if we did that? Considering all the wars and all the rape and pillage that's taken place and whatever happened in culture after society, I know I can't certify that I'm not part of a product of that.
He does not support diversity, as evidenced by his horrible commentary around immigration and this tweet, where Steve King says, "Diversity is not our strength." Somebody should tell Steve King that this country's diversity, albeit underappreciated, is absolutely our strength. It's clear he didn't know that because he also had the nerve to say this.
Where did any other subgroup of people contribute more to civilization?
Than white people?
Than Western civilization itself, that's rooted in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and the United States of America, and every place where the footprint of Christianity settled the world. That's all of Western civilization.
Bro, what? Who are you calling a subgroup? And you do know that many of the accomplishments you tout were stolen from... Never mind. Newsflash. Soon to be former congressman. The others you speak of are the black folks who built this joint for free and the indigenous whose land this once was. They've made the biggest contributions to this country. So why is soon to be former Congressman Steve King on our list if it's not crystal clear? He is the perfect example of how being a bigot will backfire on you. Maybe his June primary loss marks a turning point for how this country will deal with bigotry in the future. One can only hope. Well, we can push too. And speaking of pushing, he is the turning point because he lost his congressional race. And now we have number 6. I know there were 5, but I promised you a bonus. Here's the bonus round. What's a list of bigots without Tucker Carlson? If Tucker Carlson isn't lying on and dragging me, it's another black woman or person of color. But alas, birds of a feather do indeed flock together, so Tucker Carlson belongs. No, he's not elected, but he should at the very least have a responsibility to the general public to be responsible with his words, platform, and, well, he doesn't have that responsibility, does he? This is the case for Tucker Carlson and Blake Neff. Yes, both of y'all. Until recently, Neff was the top writer for Tucker Carlson's show. But guess what? Neff resigned recently for getting caught making racist remarks under an anonymous pseudonym on a messaging board. The same man who hides in plain sight on message boards online is the same man that wrote for Tucker Carlson's show. So are we at all surprised that the show would be rooted in bigotry, racism, and hate-filled language about us? Not at all. Tucker, here's the thing. Your responsibility doesn't end with his resignation. It ends with your belief system, which is just as problematic, clearly. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said the things you've said on air. Like this.
Like a lot of big city mayors, Lightfoot is incompetent. She has no idea what she's doing. You wouldn't let her plan your spring break. She'd send you to Wuhan by accident. But what makes Lori Lightfoot unusual is the remarkably aggressive way that she lies.
Wait a damn minute. Incompetent, aggressive. Not only did Tucker Carlson place the blame on Mayor Lightfoot for the recent violence taking place in Chicago, he also uses trigger words to define her leadership. Even if you don't agree with the mayor on policy, you cannot support this reckless rhetoric. He uttered the very same words used when talking about black women as leaders. And she's met with some of these same terms in Carlson's critiques. What you don't see is Mayor Lightfoot saying it's time to get the guns off the streets and for the Republicans to legislate around gun reform. Sounds like common sense to me. And of course, he has to attack first-term Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. His remarks following y'all's president's 4th of July speech, where he also called Senator Tammy Duckworth a moron for calling out the racist nature of Donald Trump's speech. So she's a moron for telling it like it is? Come on, Tucker, that doesn't even make sense.
And if anyone should love America, it's Ilhan Omar. This country rescued her from a squalid Kenyan refugee camp and made her a national figure, quite an ascent. But Ilhan Omar is not grateful. She hates us for it.
I can't even deal with this man, y'all. Of course he decided to attack Congresswoman Omar and her immigration into this country.
So we cannot stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
Here's the thing. I don't even think we saw the same video, man. She didn't say tear down the country. See, she said tear down systems of oppression. The very fact that you see these two things as inseparable speaks volumes. That's on you. That's not on us. And speaking of tearing things down, tell him why you mad, son. Tucker Carlson was in his feelings about my own disdain for celebrating the white supremacists who helped stand up this country with monuments.
George Washington was a slave owner, and we need to call slave owners out for what they are. Whether we think they were protecting American freedom or not, he wasn't protecting my freedom. I wasn't someone who, my ancestors weren't deemed human beings to him. And so to me, I don't care if it's a George Washington statue or a Thomas Jefferson statue or a Robert E. Lee statue, they all need to come down.
It may not be popular, but it's my truth. I don't accept things because it's always been that way. I ask questions when it doesn't seem logical or right. So here we are. Should they really have monuments, and should their faces really be carved in Mount Rushmore? But Tucker still has a show. Maybe advertisers will pull out and he will lose his platform like Blake lost his writing job. Tucker's recklessness has resulted in racist emails and death threats for many of his targets, including me. But I promised y'all I would not stay in complaint, so how can you avoid being on the bigot list? Now, let's talk about how to change the tide. Y'all know I'm known for coming with the receipts and the facts. I'm also here for change and doing better. Let's see what needs to be corrected. How can you avoid being on the bigot list? Number 1, learn history, like really. Read a book, and not the textbook that lied to you. Read one from someone who isn't working to whitewash history. 2, acknowledge your privilege. 3, stop talking to us about leveling the playing field and work diligently to do just that. Number 4, people often say in order to properly address racism and bigotry, you have to change hearts. History doesn't agree. Laws have often been changed before hearts. See Brown versus Board of Education, affirmative action, hell, even emancipation. And sometimes the spirit of the law is addressed in resolutions. Congress should pass House Resolution 990, sponsored by Joyce Beatty, at a bare minimum. It finally acknowledges that racism is a national crisis. Number 6, do it like Barbara, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, that is, who just recently proposed a Truth and Reconciliation Commission similar to the one established by former South African President Nelson Mandela. The proposal forms a nonpartisan group of experts to confront the legacy of slavery and racism in the United States. Number 7, do not comment on things that you do not understand. And number 8, shut up.
Don't say that.